Oh hey, I'm Dr. Watson. Today, we're talking
about death.
Wow. Did you see what happened? Yesterday, I died. Yesterday was the day of my death. And now, I'm dead. So sometimes, we don't use these words because they're too blunt, they're too direct. For example, I shouldn't ask a friend, "When did your grandma die?" Instead, I should say, "Oh, when did your grandma pass away?" Or you could say, "passed on." Doctors and police use a different word to describe someone who is dead. Deceased. This man is obviously deceased.
So what happens after someone dies?
Well, if it's an accidental death, the police need to investigate the dead body or do an autopsy. Scientifically, the dead body is called a corpse. The corpse is taken to a place for investigation, and this is called the morgue.
But what about the family and friends of the deceased? What happens to them?
Well, first, they feel grief. Second, they begin to grieve or mourn. And lastly, they have a ceremony to say goodbye.
The funeral is when people come to remember someone and to comfort the family.
This action is known as paying respect. Of course, every culture has a different way to deal with the body.
Sometimes the body is buried. It's placed underground.
Sometimes the body is cremated. It's burned.
But do we know what happens to people after they die? You know, the afterlife.
Well, each different religion has its own ideas about what happens. On one hand, many Muslims, Christians, and Jews believe that we go to heaven if we've been good, and hell if we've been bad. On the other hand, many Buddhists and Hindus believe in reincarnation, the idea that we re-enter life in another form.
Speaking of death, where am I? Well, obviously, I'm in a cemetery, and this is a very famous cemetery in Paris called Pere Lachaise. It's famous because there are many historic people buried here.
Like French writer Honoré de Balzac, Polish composer Frédéric Chopin, and French singer Edith Piaf.
But also, there are two very famous English speakers buried here. Oscar Wilde was a famous Irish writer.
And his tomb is famous because people come to kiss it while wearing lipstick. Some people say this helps with fertility, the ability to have babies. But probably the most visited tomb in Pere Lachaise belongs to this man. Jim Morrison was a famous American singer from the 60s rock band The Doors. Jim Morrison died in Paris, and his death is a mystery because there was no autopsy.
Now let's take a look at a very important grammar rule.
Used to. Something that happened habitually in the past, but doesn't happen anymore.
I used to be the lead singer of the 60s rock band The Doors. I used to wear tight leather pants at my concerts. I used to abuse drugs and alcohol. I used to write great songs and poetry.
However, we can also use used to when talking about things that we are accustomed to in the present. In this case, we can add the verb to be and the gerund ing. Can you give us an example, Jim?
Now I am used to being in a cemetery. I am used to having people walk around my grave. I am used to lying beside big trees.
Understand? Great. Let's take a look at some of the vocabulary we learned today. If you liked this video, subscribe to my channel. And if you want to take classes with me, you can find me at theenglishbug.com. English. It's elementary.